What the Spanish media refuses to tell you about Princess Leonor. The most interesting thing about Princess Leonor this week wasn't what was written about her. It was what wasn't. I noticed something strange while looking through headlines, clips, and discussions surrounding Leonor's latest appearances. Everyone seemed to be talking about where she was, what she wore, what event she attended, what schedule she followed, but almost nobody was talking about the bigger question. What is all of this actually doing to her? And honestly, I think that's the story hiding in plain sight. Not a scandal, not palace drama, not some secret document locked away in a royal archive. Something much more important, the reality of what happens when a teenager grows into adulthood while carrying the expectations of an entire country on her shoulders. Because when you zoom out, Princess Leonor's story starts looking very different from the version most people are being shown. And once you see it, it's difficult to unsee. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Here's what I think the media often misses. Or maybe chooses not to focus on. Every article about Leonor seems to describe her as if she's a finished product. Future queen, perfect student, military trainee, symbol of continuity, future monarch. But what if that's the wrong way to look at her? What if the real story is that she's still becoming all those things? I know that sounds obvious. But think about it. Most young people get to make mistakes privately. Most people get to change their minds. Most people get to grow without millions of strangers watching. Leonor doesn't have that luxury. And I think that's one of the most fascinating aspects of her story. The media often covers the performance. I find myself more interested in the pressure behind the performance. And yes, those are two very different things. Take the military training. That's been one of the biggest themes in Leonor's public image. We've seen photographs, ceremonies, official appearances, uniforms, headlines celebrating discipline and preparation. And to be fair, those are important. But here's my hot take. The training itself isn't the most important story. The transformation is. Because military training isn't just teaching Leonor skills. It's teaching the future queen how to exist under pressure. How to stay calm when exhausted. How to perform when uncomfortable. How to represent something larger than herself. And that changes a person. In my opinion, that's what viewers should be paying attention to. Not the uniform, the person inside it. Now compare that with Britain for a moment. When Prince William appears at an event, people see decades of preparation. Years of experience. Someone who has spent most of his life learning the role. Leonor is still in the middle of that process. We're watching the preparation happen in real time. That's incredibly rare, and I don't think enough people appreciate how unusual that is. Actually, let me ask you something. If cameras followed you during the most difficult years of your personal growth, would you look confident all the time? Would every decision make sense? Would every expression be perfect? Probably not. I know mine wouldn't. That's why I sometimes find the criticism directed at Leonor a little unfair. People often judge her as a queen before she's even had the chance to become one. And that's where I think the media narrative starts getting distorted. Because the pressure creates an impossible contradiction. People want authenticity, but they also expect perfection. Those two things don't always coexist. The moment a royal appears too polished, people call them robotic. The moment they appear human, people call it weakness. It's a game nobody can truly win. And yet Leonor keeps playing it. What fascinates me even more is the timing. We're living in an era where institutions are struggling to maintain trust. Governments, corporations, media organizations, even royal families. People question everything now. Every image, every headline, every narrative. And into that environment steps Princess Leonor. A future monarch trying to build credibility in a world that distrusts authority. Think about how difficult that challenge really is. Sometimes I wonder if the media focuses on small stories because the larger story is harder to explain. The larger story requires nuance. The larger story requires context. The larger story forces people to think. And let's be honest, thinking doesn't always generate clicks. Speculation generates clicks. Drama generates clicks. Conflict generates clicks. But understanding, that's harder. Here's another thing I don't think gets discussed enough. Leonor represents a completely different generation of royalty. She isn't growing up in the same media environment as previous heirs. She's growing up in the TikTok era, the YouTube era, the viral clip era, the meme era. A single moment can travel around the world before dinner. One facial expression can become an international discussion. One awkward second can become a week's worth of headlines. That's a completely different reality. If Mr. Beast were advising a royal communications team, he'd probably tell them something simple. People connect with action, not messaging. That's why Leonor's military journey has resonated with so many people. People are watching her do something, not simply talk about something. And whether you're a monarchist or not, that's an important distinction. Actions are harder to fake. Which brings me to what I think the Spanish media often leaves out. The uncertainty. The fact that nobody truly knows what kind of Queen Leonor will become. And that's okay. In fact, that's normal. Yet many headlines act as if the future has already been written. As if the story is complete. As if the outcome is guaranteed. I don't believe that. I think we're watching the story unfold. And that's far more interesting. Because uncertainty creates possibility. Maybe she'll modernize the monarchy in unexpected ways. Maybe she'll redefine public service. Maybe she'll face challenges nobody anticipates. Nobody knows. That's the truth. And the truth is often more interesting than certainty. Another observation. When I read discussions about Leonor, people often talk about what she represents. The crown, the future, the institution, tradition, continuity, all important ideas. But sometimes I think those labels accidentally hide the person. The individual, the daughter, the young woman, the human being behind the symbolism. And whenever that happens, something important gets lost. Because institutions don't feel pressure. People do. Institutions don't feel anxiety. People do. Institutions don't have doubts. People do. That's what I think many stories fail to capture. The human reality beneath the royal image. And perhaps that's the biggest thing the media isn't telling you. Not because they're hiding it, but because it's difficult to package into a headline. The biggest story isn't what Leonor is doing. The biggest story is what Leonor is becoming. That's a completely different conversation. And it's one that deserves more attention. So what have I learned from following Leonor's journey? I've learned that the most important stories are often hiding behind the obvious ones. The uniform isn't the story. The transformation is. The appearance isn't the story. The responsibility is. The headlines aren't the story. The person navigating them is. And maybe that's the real reason people keep returning to Princess Leonor. Not because they know exactly who she is, but because they're watching someone figure it out in front of the entire world. And honestly, that might be the most human royal story of all.